Welcome to the Fantasy Source Football Podcast. My name is David A. Arnott, sitting here with Bill Bender. The National Football League season is finally upon us.
I know it's been very, very difficult to work today knowing that the season opener is tonight with my favorite team obviously playing in that game. So just trying to kill a couple hours here. But, with the season starting, obviously there's just as much excitement about the fantasy season starting.
I mean, I for one, have been playing Roundup on loop for at least the past 6 hours. But, you know what, there are people out there who are not as fortunate as we are. They drafted Peyton Manning, perhaps as high as the third or fourth rounds. What can you tell those people right now who are hearing the news that Peyton Manning is probably going to be out for a while?
Well, Matt Latufsky, our colleague and co-worker, sits next to me every day, and he was the one who unfortunately took Manning in our Experts League. But, the season isn't over on one player. I say that tongue-in-cheek, but Manning's a huge loss, don't get me wrong. But there are other quarterbacks out there you can use, and more importantly, I think the shockwave is what it does with the other Colts players, Joseph Adai, Reggie Wayne, Dallas Clark. They've all taken a hit in value too. So owners are going to feel that over the next few weeks until hopefully Manning returns.
I tend to think that Wayne is the one guy who's not really going to be all that affected, that he's still going to be the primary target all the way along. Joseph Adai, all the running backs that might get carries for the Colts, they're pretty much off the board as far as I'm concerned, even in trade tots. I mean, I'd rather have the likes of Cedric Benson at this point. And then going on down, I feel worse about Dallas Clark, but not nearly as bad as I feel about the Pierre Garçons of the world, those guys.
Right, that's what made Manning special, is he was able to get the ball to Pierre Garçon, Blair White, Austin Cullen.
Jacob Tamme.
Yeah, make these guys fantasy household names. But you're right, Reggie Wayne is good enough that he's going to be okay with Kerry Collins. He may not score every time, every week, but he'll still be pretty good. And Dallas Clark, the only thing, he may not get as far up the seams. He may not be, catching for as many yards per catch, but I still think he's in play. And for the owners that lost Manning, the key now is to find the right quarterback on a week-to-week basis. Like a guy, I would take a chance on Mark Sanchez this week, honestly. Against Dallas with the banged-up corners, you start from there. You kind of play the matchups each week, grind it out till Manning comes back.
Now, considering that most people who took Manning had the foresight to perhaps take one of those numbers 13 through 15 quarterbacks, I've seen a lot of people take Sam Bradford behind Manning also. If you did not do that, does that mean that with you suggesting taking Sanchez, that you're suggesting almost streaming your quarterbacks?
Well, yeah, if you have to, because, I was talking to Eric Ferreira this week, and he's talking about using Kyle Orton and Eli Manning, and that's fine by me. You just got to play the matchups. It's tough. I mean, you may not win a fantasy championship with Kyle Orton as your starter, but you can grind it out, get in the playoffs. And as we know, Tim Tebow had a huge game in Week 16 last year that nobody will ever forget, that won titles that started Tebow. So it is doable. It's discouraging that Manning's out because he's an enjoyable quarterback to watch and to own, but you got to make do with what you have.
Talking about a guy who was enjoyable to own last year, I mean, this might have been Arian Foster's season might have been the greatest, most fulfilling fantasy guy that people drafted. He was pretty much universally drafted as a late-round flyer last year, and then ended up being probably the most valuable fantasy player in just about every league. His hamstring, it's bothering him. He says he's going to play. Gary Kubiak is not going to commit to it. How do you suggest we proceed?
Well, it's going to be a game time decision, meaning you should come to Fantasy Source on Sunday morning and look at our Game Time Decisions blog, because we'll be right on top of it as soon as we know a definitive answer, then we'll have it. And I'd go along with the theory that I'm planning on him playing in the two leagues where I own him, but I definitely have a contingency plan in place right now. And that is, I don't know if I would start Ben Tate or Derek Ward, because I think they would split in the event that Arian Foster's out, and you're looking at two flex plays instead of one running back.
So you're thinking that if you have Foster, and even if you have Derek Ward or Ben Tate, it's unlikely you have them both, but even if you have them both, really, you shouldn't be playing Foster's backup. You should be, perhaps, you're more likely better off looking somewhere else for a replacement.
Yeah, that's a spot where if you have like a Reggie Bush or a Cedric Benson, a guy that you might not be starting every week, that you take a chance on them and more touches, more carries over. You never know what Kubiak. Remember when Kubiak used to use a different running back every week? Steve Slayton, Chris Brown. I can name all of them because I owned all of them. I think that's what you're running the risk of doing with Ben Tate or Derek Ward. and it becomes a 50-50 proposition rather than a safe play.
How far down the list does your running back have to be before you just say, forget it, I'm going with Derek Ward? Like, let's say in one of my other leagues, my best running back other than Ward might be Danny Woodhead.
Well, in that event, I would take Derek Ward. I'd take the starter for Houston. But as you get down to like 35, 40, a little lower than 40, then you go ahead and play the backup. But like I said, let's just hope Aaron Foster plays, and This is all a moot point and a moot discussion.
Let's talk now about the rookies this year. This is a topic that always comes up because it's human nature. We love when rookies because they're new and exciting and novel. We love to pick them up and try to tell everyone else, you know what, I got him before anybody else knew how great he was going to be. But the sheer brutal numbers behind it are against you in fantasy football. I think that the widely quoted stat is something like only 4 rookie wide receivers have had over 1,000 yards receiving, or something crazy like that, where it's Moss, Colston, Anquan Bolden. I think Michael Clayton is like the odd one out. And that's in recent years. Those are the only guys that have been like upper tier fantasy receivers, yet we're seeing Julio Jones and AJ Green getting drafted this year.
Yeah, and I drafted each of them in the mini leagues I'm in. I have those guys on my rosters in some point, and I made a somewhat bold proclamation this week that I think AJ Green and Julio Jones both score touchdowns this week. And I don't know where they go from there, but I like their chances this week. I like AJ Green more than most people because I thought he was the best player in the draft. And I think with the Bengals being behind and playing from behind most of the season, he's going to catch a lot of passes, and he's going to surprise some people. And I think he's going to do well against the Browns this week. So those two are definitely great. I think you play him this week. You drafted him. You took a chance on him. Throw him out there.
I mean, especially in those deep leagues where you've got 3 receivers and a flex, like you may as well take a chance on the guy that is clearly talented and athletic.
Right.
But when we're talking about running backs, I don't think that those same rules quite apply. So for Mark Ingram and Daniel Thomas, it's more about gauging how many opportunities they're going to get, I would think.
Right, Daniel Thomas, I'm sitting this week because he's got a hamstring injury, a minor one. Right? They're saying minor, but I don't know how much he touches it, and I don't know how much success he has against the Patriots. Ingram, however, I have him in a couple leagues. I'm starting him in one. I'm sitting him in another. It just kind of, if you don't have a better option on the bench, again, I think he's a guy, if you've reached up to draft him, go ahead and throw him in there. He looks like he'll be the Saints' kind of goal line back. He may not get a lot of touches tonight against Green Bay, but with the amount of points I think that'll be scored in that game, I think Ingram has a chance to at least get in the end zone.
Would you say he's the Saints' quasi number one?
Right, yeah. Pierre Thomas, we want Ingram to be the number one, but right now Pierre Thomas is still starting. Ingram, down the road, you're looking at maybe a 950-yard, 10-touchdown guy, but he'll start the season as a flex play.
So let's wrap this up with a nice broad question. You're looking at one player that you want to watch this week for fantasy purposes. Who are you thinking of watching?
The guy that comes to mind is Peyton Hillis, and I'm going to watch the Bengals-Browns game anyway because I'm a native of Ohio. It's always a fun game for me to watch. The rest of the country might not feel that way, but Peyton Hillis is the guy because of how we looked at him in the offseason. Some owners shied away. Some owners still believe in him. He had 41 carries against the Bengals in 2 games last year. I want to see how he holds up with a heavy workload. I want to see him get in the end zone. And I want to make sure that he's a running back number 2, maybe borderline starter number 1 for the rest of the season.
All